I have a question. Remember the Addams family? What if the Addams family played chess and they were playing white against the Najdorf Sicilian?
What is the first thing that strikes you about this position on the board? What about the hole on F5? Let's go back to the starting position. You may be very familiar with the Najdorf Sicilian. These are the opening moves of the Najdorf. But when white plays the move h2 to h3, this is known as the Addams attack. The two options here for black are either pawn to e5 or pawn to e6. We're going to look at e6 first. And the lesson here is if you can exterminate enemy play before proceeding with your own, don't hesitate to do so. And that is the idea of the Addams attack. Pawn to h2 followed by pawn on g2 to g4 and on to g5 is to attack the knight on f6, gaining tempo. In this position, playing the pawn to b5 is playable. However, what if the bishop on e7 captures the pawn on g5? It's a good idea to always look for tactics. Knight takes e6. Can you see why? If pawn captures the knight on e6, this allows queen h5 check, and white regains the piece. Always keep in mind that the main difference between an open position and a closed position in the Najdorf is the way in which the center is opened up. And following this is the minor piece battle. And so the game progresses. White castles queenside. Always be on the lookout for holes or weak squares. And this game is a good illustration of why you should do so. Here it looks as though white tossing a pawn to the wind. But let's see what happens if pawn takes pawn. Then play could proceed with knight on d takes b5, recapturing. Now the queen is being hit. The hole is the d6 square. First, after removing a piece, check, and after the king moves, then the next move is queen to b4 to attack the knight on b6. At the same time, both the rook and the bishop are under attack. And now queen to b4. Examining the position, if the queen moves, then the king on f8 will be open to a discovery. Also, both the knight on d6 and the pawn on g6 attack the pawn on f7. White regains the piece. Here, which side would you want to play? Black or white? Now let's take a few moves back, and instead of rook c6, the other move is knight to d5. And once again, white restores material equality. Now let's take the moves back. We're going to look at the bishop recapturing on e5 rather than the pawn. So the move here is bishop captures e5, and the game continues with pawn to f4, gaining tempo. Pawn takes f7. When you take your time and study a game, train your eye to look for checks. Look for discoveries, look for tactics. The knight is invulnerable. If queen captures, bishop takes b6, and the queen drops on e6. Again, the idea of the Adams attack is to attack the knight on f6. But what happens if black plays h6, not allowing white to continue, or discouraging white from playing the pawn to g5? So if you're playing white in this position, you'll have to say, well, since I did not get to play my pawn to g5 due to black's play to h6, I'm going to have to look for other options. Maybe posting a knight on d5 with the idea of bishop e3 and knight d5 both hitting the b6 square. So black plays the knight to d7 in order to cover b6. As you continue to climb that ladder, that chess ladder, and you get stronger and better, you'll start to do more of what is known as jockeying for position. Both sides are waiting to see if the other side is going to either open up a center or initiate a tactic. So what should black do? Capture the bishop on g5 or capture the queen? Now we have just entered into the tactical minefield. The option was either rook takes d8 or bishop takes d5, but let's see if bishop does not take d5. Instead, what if black plays other moves such as knight takes e1? Then after knight takes e1, bishop e7, and then white has ideas such as knocking out the pawns on d6 and e5 if possible. Bishop takes d5, ed5, and if knight takes e1, bishop e7, rook on f to e8, and bishop takes d6. Now the question is, does white get compensation in this position? Knight is well posted on c6, and I would consider this an absolute post since the knight cannot be kicked by any pawns. The bishop is on the b1 to h7 diagonal for the moment. White has two healthy bishops, and after knight e7 check, I think white gets plenty of compensation for the exchange sacrifice.